Well, the first piece of business is new business. EPC 04-2022, 17 Rainbow Circle, S. Sorrells and J. Sorrells, to construct a residential addition and related features proximate to wetlands and watercourses. The property lies along the terminus of Rainbow Circle, approximately 350 feet north of Tokenic Road, and is identified as map number 37, lot number 18D. The zone is R1/2, and it is approximately 0.57 acres. Rick, we are to accept the application?
Mr. Chairman, just to accept the application this evening, initiate the process, acknowledge receipt, and our review will be started from this point forward. Just to keep the board and the commission in the loop, there is a possibility that unless there's some overwhelming reason, I may attempt to do this as an agent approval, but I welcome any input the board members have this evening.
Okay, I'll open it up to the commission members. Does any commission member have anything he would like to point out to Rick and would like Rick to follow up with on 17 Rainbow Circle?
Yeah, I got one.
Go ahead.
On the site review, I looked across at the river, and there looks like there were some planting beds at one time, and maybe because it's winter, they don't look that great. But I applaud that they're doing that, and they should probably beef that up better because it does slope. Everything slopes from that gradient right down to that. It's a pretty vibrant stream. So they've got a good start going, but I would hope that they could improve that and catch any of the fertilizers, pesticides that are going into that location. That's the only point I had.
Thanks, Bill. Is there any other commission member that would like to speak? No? Okay. Rick, okay, moving on to the next piece of new business. It's EPC 05-2022, 141 West Avenue, D, and I apologize for this because I'm not sure I pronounce it well, Leszczynski, to demolish an existing detached garage, construct parking, grade, and conducted other related activities within close proximity to the wetlands and watercourses, and it's Stony Brook. The work is in association with a proposal to partially demolish and then raise and soundproof an existing single-family dwelling and associated features. The property lies along the south side of West Avenue, approximately 335 feet east of Old Parish Road, and is identified as on the map number 39 as lot number 103. Zone is 1/3, and this is approximately 0.1702 acres.
Summarizing that, the staff has initiated the review process. The vast majority of this goes into the structural proofing and improvement of the dwelling. But also pertinent to this is demolition of an existing detached garage and some other improvements along the river, including drainage and perhaps some planting. So Mr. Lesniewski can expect that we'll have a letter, and then in the coming weeks and months that he can prepare an application that is, certainly consistent with this commission expects. Welcome to any kind of input that members have at this early point, and things I should be on the lookout for, and whatever.
Okay, I'll open up to commission members. Is there anybody that would like to speak on EPC 05-2022 and would like Rick to note and follow up with the applicant? Yes, Mr. Wright.
Does anybody else want to kick in here? Please do. I don't want to be the only person. A couple items. I know they're doing a big Cultec system in there, or a Cultec system. There's a very large oak tree and down right near the water line, and I would be concerned as they're digging for that Cultec that they don't mess with any of the root system. It's one of the items. I don't know how often they get flooded through there, and I don't know how Cultex works when it's being flooded. Of course, that's when you want it to work the best, but they're in a flood zone there, and that's where that Cultec's going. So that ought to be looked into just to make sure it's going to be working when you need it. If there's got 4 feet of water over the top of it. And then the only other item is, as you mentioned a little bit about having a buffer zone there planted as well. It's kind of a dump zone. Right now, you can tell they had dumped a lot of stuff. You know, it's small materials now. They got rid of most of it, but there's still, they had dumped behind the garage and such. And there is a large across the stream. I don't know if it's on their property. It's probably not. There's an old bunch of couches and other stuff just looking pretty ugly, but it may not be on their property. So that's.
We've had that discussion with this owner and intended with the other owner across the property.
Really, you talked to the other guy?
So when I started, I went at 11:30 at night.
I'm sorry, who's speaking, please? Hello?
This is the moderator, Elisa. I just muted a new caller that just came in.
Okay, thank you very much, Elisa. Okay, Rick, perk tests. Okay, so we can figure out if the Cultex, et cetera, is going to be.
Yes, they are doing test holes.
Okay, okay, because that's important. So when we get the presentation, they can talk to that.
Yes.
Okay, is there any other commission member that would like to speak to this?
Hey, good evening, Eric. It's Michael. Just from past experiences, we've had folks do development and they've come back to the EPC trough a few times, and namely in respect to mechanicals. So, Rick, if you just want to keep an eye on AC pads and generator pads, and let the owner know that they have limited space to place these types of items, and that the commission. I'm speaking for myself, but the commission doesn't want to have the applicant come back a second or a third time and say, "Hey, we asked for something, we got it, and now we want to do this. Please, can we have it?" And they even come back another time and say, "Oh, I forgot about the last 2 meetings. Can I, put another third AC pad toward the wetland and a place set and a patio?" This is a very tight property, so I think the applicant needs to be very focused on their activities on the lot. That's my 2 cents.
I know I have taken a comprehensive look at the house, and they aren't providing elevated condenser pads that are mounted to the house a foot above the base flood. So, yeah, we'll take a look at that for sure.
Yep. Okay. Anybody else would like to speak? Okay, moving on. Old business, EPC 40-2021, 12 Scout Trail. A. Patros and B. Patros to demolish an existing residence and construct a single-family dwelling, drive, drainage, and other related features within a designated upland review area. The property lies along the north side of the cul-de-sac of Scout Trail, approximately 570 feet west of Old Parish Road, and is identified as map number 20, lot number 22. The zone is R1, and it is plus or minus 1.355 acres. Rick?
Mr. Chairman, this had been previously accepted a couple of months ago, and a list of technical data had been requested of the applicant, and they have prepared the plans you have before you tonight in response to our comments and the comments of DPW as they look at drainage and other factors. In very brief history, this project, or a project similar to it, had been previously approved by the EPC as an agent approval, and it was for additions to the dwelling. And it was about a year or so ago. owner seeking bids on the project, and speaking with this contractor, they determined after a long hard look project that it would be.
Hey, Rick, can you get closer to the mic? We can't hear you. I can't hear you.
The reason is that if both of us are on,
Oh,
it has a, it repeats, it's squeal.
there was a prior agent approval, and based on discussions the owner had with the contractor, that it was in everybody's best interest, or their best interest, in order to construct a new dwelling. Mr. Petros has come back with a new application, and he has sought to address our concerns and the concerns of the Public Works Department, which have been addressed substantially in the plans that you have this evening before you. So it is a new house. Given the nature of the project, the staff is looking to demonstrate, have the applicant demonstrate that the impact on resources was minimized, that they utilize measures to preserve water quality, that they're looking at measures to attenuate the impacts of drainage on infrastructure and adjoining properties, and then looking at the wetlands in detail to ensure that again, protection of the resource and enhance as available the resource as well. In response, they've secured the services of a Connecticut engineer, Mr. Frangione, who's here this evening. And he's developed a site development plan showing the house, a pool, and other new driveway and other related facilities. They took the opportunity, both in this application and the prior application, to relocate the structure further from the wetlands than currently exists, which was a positive alternative that they considered. They have grade change in the low to moderate range. They're not removing any significant vegetation, individual trees or groups of vegetation. And in total, about 480 square feet of the upland review areas is impacted by development. The drainage and water quality plan consists of a number of features, including utilizing space under the relocated driveway for the storage and attenuating of stormwater impacts, and also utilizing Caltex to further attenuate the impacts of the development. The drainage report was completed, and the project engineer has determined that if constructed in accordance with the approved design, that there'd be no adverse impacts on drainage and adjoining properties or infrastructure that's in the street. Just as to step back for a moment, the regulated areas on this property, there's basically uplands on one whole side of the property, uplands on the other side of the property, and basically down through the middle of the site is a drainage channel and associated wetland soils. There's a sediment erosion control plan that has been provided. There is, they are seizing on the ability of the soils to cool and treat runoff through the use of infiltration. It's going to be served by propane gas in lieu of oil, so they're not going to have any in-ground fuel oil tanks. Collection structures will be equipped with devices that are going to assist in attenuation of, or to intercepting potential debris and to further preserve their infiltration structures. And they also took the opportunity here to provide a mitigation plan. And the mitigation plan consists of hand removal of some accumulated silt and debris from the channel. They have done a boulder demarcation feature in some of the more critical enclosed areas close to the development itself. And they have provided, which was absent from the prior approvals, a planting plan that was done by an environmental professional in those critical spaces. In terms of alternatives, I did touch upon it, that they did seize the opportunity to move the driveway and portions of the dwelling. The new relocated dwelling is substantially further from the wetlands and watercourses than the original dwelling itself. So it's important that that is recognized. One thing I can say is, in terms of the drainage analysis and impact analysis, DPW has reviewed it, and the project engineer has advanced, which is on the plans, advanced the drainage proposal. And there's just some minor tweaking of the information and design that's been outlined by Mr. Osterfine that's necessary. And I've covered that with a condition in the approval. It's not anticipated that this project will have a negative adverse impact on the wetlands and watercourses, and if implemented appropriately, that it will not adversely affect water quality, drainage, and the mitigations proposed is going to be a benefit to the regulated areas that are there. I'm available for questions. Mr. Frangione is here as well.
Well, why don't we let Bob speak, representing the applicant?
Yes, hi, this is Rob Frangione. Just want to make sure you guys can hear me okay? Okay, I'm coming to you from the halls of New Canaan High School. My second job is the pole vault coach on the track team, and we have our end of season banquet tonight. So I'm coming to you from a table at New Canaan High School. Rick pretty much covered everything I could have covered today. So unless you have questions for me, that's all I plan on saying tonight. So.
Okay, let's go around the commissioners. Peter McGinnis, would you have questions or comments?
No questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Lauren Smith? Lauren?
Yeah, just real quick, what was the maintenance for the clean out?
Which clean out are you referring to?
Let's see.
And basically, as far as cleanouts go, they are the maintenance for the system. It's just a cap that sits on flush with the ground. You pop the cap, it acts as an inspection port, so you can see if the water levels are high in the drainage structures. And it's also a point where you could come in with a vacuum or a jet and clean things out. So that's and that's what's outlined, part of what's outlined in the maintenance procedures.
Okay, and I just missed the maintenance procedures. Were those on the maps?
Sheet S3. It's
Okay.
below all the erosion control notes.
Got it.
Oh.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, Lauren. Carolyn?
Hi, thank you. Given that a significant portion of that the roof drains into the pervious driveway, I'm very intrigued by the idea of this pervious driveway, and I was wondering if you could explain a little bit how it works.
Sure.
With its underlying reservoir, and also if there's any ongoing maintenance required.
Certainly. So the way this works, and I've done the analysis to show that the roof from the majority of the house, the back of the house, goes to a level spreader, which is a perforated pipe in the stone reservoir beneath the pervious asphalt driveway. Pervious asphalt driveways are great. The rainfall goes right through them. The soils are what treats the runoff and infiltrates the runoff underneath it. And the level spreader has been sized to be able to take that point discharge from the downspouts and convert that to more of a sheet flow through the gravel. So it'll migrate through the gravel, slow itself down, infiltrate into the soil, and then for the very extreme storms, if it had to, it can hop over the entrance to the driveway and out into the street and into the catch basin that's in the street. And all of that has been modeled in the stormwater analysis. As far as maintenance goes, really, I don't want to say these things are maintenance free because nothing's maintenance free. However, the day-to-day operation, all you really have to do is blow using like a leaf blower, just get the big stuff off. Every 5 years or so, you need to have like a vacuum truck come in and suck up the fines from that surface. But beyond that, it's pretty much maintenance free. It's a great system. I've done this. Oh, God, I can't even count how many times in Greenwich and in other towns, and it works great.
Are you by any chance familiar with the parking lot at Highland Farms in Darien?
Unfortunately, no, I'm
Oh,
not.
I'm
I'm
just
sorry.
I'm just trying to assess if it's like that, because it's also a pervious parking area.
Mhm.
The stones don't move. I mean, like in the winter, with plows and everything, that's not an issue.
No, it's the asphalt driveway is asphalt. It's pervious asphalt,
Oh,
and so they pour it just like asphalt.
okay.
It's a special mix. Basically, what happens is the fine material is out, and it's more of a bonier surface. But it looks like asphalt, behaves like asphalt.
Interesting.
You can drive on it. You can bounce a basketball on it. You can play on it. You can do all these things. So.
Carolyn, if I may, Highland Park is gravel, is like large stone gravel.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking it was.
The walkway around Highland Park is impervious asphalt, okay, because it basically has, as Bob just mentioned, has the finer material. What the homeowner has to do is make sure that they don't use sand to, during a winter event, you don't throw sand down there because the sand will quote unquote find and fill out, and fill the holes. And then as was mentioned, you then, have to go and essentially vacuum your thing. Now, so that's
Yeah, what most people have found with pervious asphalt driveways is you don't need to put sand down. You don't need to do any of that stuff because as long as you plow it, as long as the temperature gets to 33 degrees, whatever leftover snow is on there melts and it drops straight down. And so I've had clients tell me that it's the best thing because their driveways are clear and everybody else has ice accumulated on it. And I just came from one that I did in Greenwich. I had to do a site visit for something else, and I saw piles of snow everywhere, but the driveway itself was absolutely clear. So it's great. It's great stuff.
Thank you.
Carolyn. Anything else? Carolyn, do you have anything else?
Oh, the only other thing that I wanted to mention, and it's not it's not just for this applicant, but I think it's just something generally for anyone who lives next to a water course. I noticed that the shed is remaining on the property, which is fine. But I know that after some of the big storm events, there was a presentation to the Board of Selectmen, and Craig Flaherty mentioned that one of the issues that caused some flooding was like things that were left near water courses, like shovels and things that you might typically find in or near a shed. And I just thought that this might be a good reminder, for people who do have sheds and things next to a water course that, prior to a big storm event, it's a good idea to get those things out of the way because they do, they either get swept into the water course or the wind blows them in, and they do cause clogging and backing up of water. So I just thought I would mention that.
Okay. Thank you. Michael Urban?
No questions.
Okay, Bill Wright?
Only one comment. I applaud the planning and the demarcation of rocks there. That's a nice layout. And should be used in other locations. So good one. That's it.
Jim Millard?
I would echo that. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Any of the questions I had, Mr. Chairman, have been answered by the very capable fellow commissioners.
Hey, Rob, I have a quick one, and it's sort of typically, pervious asphalt is used for large parking lots and things like that, because you have to have a special run of asphalt, at the asphalt plant that eliminates that they don't add in the smaller
Fine.
material.
Right.
And typically for a driveway, it's just not worth it for the asphalt plant to run it. So how do you handle that?
Usually they're running batches for multiple jobs. They'll typically do them on a weekend because they have to shut the plant down and run that special mix. And so there's a bunch of orders that come in at once, and you just kind of have to get in line and wait. That's they'll do it if you pay enough. So.
Sounds familiar. Okay, thank you. Anybody else would like to, any other commissioner would like to ask questions? Rick? No? You all set? Okay. I think we have all the information we need. Mr. Frangione, thank you very much. And
Thank you.
the commission will move on to the next item. And yes, you have to prepare resolutions in that committee, right? Okay, moving on. These are public hearings, which are being continued from our February 2nd meeting. The first one is EPC 41 2021, 31 Birch Road, D. Gabriele and L. Gabriele, to construct an in-ground pool, fence, equipment, patio, and other related features within a designated upland review area. The property lies along the west side of Birch Road, approximately 500 feet south of Point O' Woods Road, and is identified as map number 11, lot number 3. The zone is an R1/2, and this is approximately 0.29 acres. Rick?
Mr. Chairman, we covered last month at the opening of the public hearing about the basic housekeeping items with the submission of notices and publication of notices were all accomplished. In this particular instance, if you recall, 2 of the 6 notices had not been accomplished, and under the advice of counsel, we heard no testimony, and we voted to continue the public hearing to this month to allow for the submission of those notices. We renoticed this public hearing in the newspaper and also providing an agenda to here. So with that, we can continue this evening's public hearing. And I'll give you just a very brief presentation of what's occurring. And I know that many of you have gone to the site. Very small site. Currently, there is a single-family dwelling drive and other features typically associated with residential development on the parcel. Is again residentially developed, all upland. There's a usual array of urbanized vegetation, upland vegetation associated with residential development in this area. Rather small backyard. The rear property boundary is a stone wall, and then it drops down about a foot or so and enters the property, town property, in which the Darien Nature Center has a lease on. There's light to moderate woods between Mr. Gabriel's property and a pond, and around that pond is just a very narrow wetland fringe that is present. What's being proposed is a modestly sized pool, very small patio space to the rear of the property, and and then all its attendant facilities, ranging from the fences to the pool equipment as well. in applications of this sort, we are looking to assess impacts on resources, including the wetlands and water courses, looking at issues pertaining to water quality and drainage, and then to offset any potential impacts or to enhance the overall quality of the regulated areas, we look at mitigation. The applicant has responded rather effectively, in my opinion, to that request for information. It's been reported over 1,000 square feet of the upland area will be impacted by the development. The grade change is nil associated with it. There's no loss of trees or vegetation in the space, and in fact, it's rather flat and unvegetated at this point. The outward limits of the hardened surfaces, the pool patio pavers, is no less than like 34, 35 feet from the wetlands on the adjoining property. To preserve water quality, there's been an erosion control plan provided, and the applicant has also provided for infiltration to seize on the soil's ability to naturally cool and filter runoff. We can talk about both of these things at the same time, drainage and water quality. Project engineer, Mr. Devanzo, who's here this evening, has done a drainage and water quality plan, and he's intercepting portions of the roof and infiltrating the ground. And with that submission, his report demonstrates there's no adverse impact on drainage in adjoining properties. And again, he is taking advantage of the infiltration for water quality purposes as well. There's riprap aprons, any of the collection structures have deep sumps and bell traps. And probably most importantly, this is whatever does not go to infiltrators is routed over an area that's naturally vegetated 36 to 40 feet from the edge of wetlands anyway. Again, no adverse impact on drainage and adjoining properties. Like the prior application, DPW, they had some comments. Again, the concept has been enforced, and there was just some de minimis kind of tweaking of information that Mr. Osterfine wants in order to endorsement. And I wrote into, I would be writing into the approval that you have to get that verification before we can move actually to a building permit. To displace some of the manicured lawn that's on the property and to mitigate for the impacts, he has done a minimal at this point planting plan, but it's really it kind of seems it's consistent with the scope of the project itself. There is one large tree in the general area, and they have made an effort at our suggestion to preserve the tree and to move things along around in order to avoid impacts on that tree. There will be a fence installed during the construction phase to protect the root mass during the process. And lastly, in terms of alternatives, the exploration of alternatives, this seems, again, it's a very modestly sized pool, modestly sized patio space around it. There are constraints imposed by zoning. You can move the pool a little bit further to the east, but it really doesn't result in any kind of meaningful change to the project itself or improvement to the regulated areas itself. Again, I think probably the most important feature here, there is a hard line already on the site, which is that bordering wall, which clearly defines not only the property boundary, but a limit of encroachment. And again, don't forget there will be a fence on top of it for pool safety purposes. If the board has any questions, I'm available. Again, Wayne's here this evening. The objective would be if the board wants to move forward that they close the public hearing and direct staff to develop a resolution for the coming, the next meeting. That's it.
Oh, Wayne, are you representing the applicant?
I'm here as well. Dominic Gabriel's on the line.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
How are you?
It's Mr. Gabriel, would you mind spelling your name and giving your address for the court reporter?
Sure. It's Dominic Gabriel, DOMINICKGABRIELE, and I'm at 31 Birch Road in Darien.
Thank you.
Sure.
Would you like to, you have the floor if you'd like to speak.
No, I just would just say that I appreciate everybody's time and everyone on the call for reviewing the plan. I can see how much everybody has to deal with and go through to kind of review these plans. And so I just really appreciate the time from Wayne as well, in particular, for putting all this together and Rick reviewing it. For me, that's just about it. Wayne's here as well, who can answer any of your more technical questions. So thank you.
Okay, commission members? Would anybody like to speak?
It's Peter. I just wanted to ask Rick if there's been any neighbor comment to the office, and also just wanted to confirm that if I'm reading it correctly, the pool is not within an upland area or within a regulated area itself, right?
No, the answer to the first question is no comments from abutters. And the second thing is the pool. This is in the upland review area as well. It's not in wetlands. The wetlands are actually off-site by 35 to 40 feet. When you put together the 50-foot upland review area, patio and part of the pool.
Thank you.
Any other commission member would like to speak? Come on, Bill.
No questions.
Okay, then, commission members, thank you.
Eric, let me just offer one question, if I may. This is Jim Millard, and it's really, I guess, directed at Rick. To be sure you're the good neighbors to the Gabrielle family in the Darien Nature Center, as well as the Darien Land Trust, have been notified and aware of the project and don't have any issues with it, kind of like Peter's question just now. It's a terrific backyard view that the Gabrielles enjoy, adjacent to a really fine park in our town. And I'm just curious whether the Land Trust and/or the Nature Center, I'm sure they've been notified, and it sounds like they had no comments if Mr. McGinnis's question is correctly answered.
So, okay, now I'd like to open up to members of the public. Is there a member of the public that would like to speak on this application? Is there a member of the public that would like to speak to this application? That's right. No, I think the commission members have asked their questions, and you've done a remarkable job collecting information to tell us. So, okay, so I don't think there's any more members of the public. I will need a motion to close the public hearing. Mr. Millard?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I make a motion and move to close the public hearing with respect to the application EPC number 41-2021 with respect to 31 Birch Road.
Thank you. May I have a second, Mr. Wright?
I second that.
Great. I guess I'll say without objection, so moved. Okay, so the public hearing is closed. Rick, I think you have enough to write up the resolution for the EPC to review next time? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gabrielle, for an excellent presentation. Okay,
Thank you so much, everybody.
okay.
Have a great night.
Yep, you too. Thank you. Moving on, we're now moving on to the next public hearing, EPC 42-2021, 175 Brookside Road, 175 Brookside LLC, to grade and construct a driveway, parking court, drainage, and related features within a designated upland review area. These activities are linked to single family dwellings associated with a pending 2-lot subdivision of property. The parcel lies within the west side of Brookside Road, just north of Stonewall Lane, and is identified as map number 05, lot number 13. The zone is an R2, and this lot is plus or minus 4.5387 acres. Rick, where do we stand on this?
Mr. Chairman, it's Tim Millard again.
Yes.
Just before Rick takes us through his always capable project description, I think I owe it to the commission and for good form, again, am recusing myself from participating in the deliberations for 175 Brookside Road.
Okay, thank you. Jim Millard is recused. Okay,
Yes, sir.
moving on to Rick, you want
Sorry. Housekeeping items typically associated with a public hearing were summarized when the hearing was opened at the February 2nd meeting. There was extensive discussion at last month's meeting, and the net result was the commission determined to continue the hearing to allow the applicant to generate responses to very specific questions concerning drainage impact and design alternatives, resource protection, mitigation, and maintenance. The continuance also allowed the town's peer reviewer, Mr. Canis from Ty and Bond, to conduct and complete his peer review of the drainage report and other civil engineering elements to ensure consistency with not only the inland wetland regulations, but the pertinent sections of the zoning regulations as they pertain to erosion control, drainage, and other related matters. It may be prudent, but I'll leave it certainly to the commission members. There may not be need to go through and rehash the entire what was summarized last month. I mean, generally, the technical elements of subdivision, meaning the demonstration of that a dwelling can be placed on the property, that there be suitable septic areas, that drainage could be properly attenuated, and those related items were really given a great deal of time and attention last month. And we certainly called on the applicant's engineers and our peer reviewer to assist the commission in determining if those items have been successfully addressed. And I think we should probably have a brief hearing from our peer reviewer and Doug DeVest on those items. But generally, it seems that those technical items for review have been pretty well addressed, or at least on the way of being successfully addressed. There was a more narrow focus on really 3 primary items that, again, we'll give our time and attention to this month. And one had to do with the farmer's drain and its performance as part of a system in the eastern portions of the property, and the observations of neighbors that not necessarily that there was an item occurring on their properties that was leading to poor drainage, but more so that what has been found on 175 Brookside Deal and the Farmer's Drain, Brookside Drive, leading to kind of a long-term maintenance problem that was often, the drain was often obstructed, often subject to erosion. And when failure occurred, even though it had been upgraded in the recent past, had led to some adverse drainage conditions. So that was one item that required further time and attention. The second item had to do with the wetlands in the eastern portion itself. I felt very strongly that given the extent of the plan, the scope of the plan, that making not only the job of the inland wetlands, but also of the planning and zoning when we review the subdivision, that further attention is required in that space. And it seemed to me that the best course of action was to set those wetlands aside and to improve them by allowing them to attain a greater level of functionality as a wet meadow by setting aside, managing the space appropriately, doing seasonal cuttings, perhaps some introduction of select plantings, and utilizing a demarcation feature that would allow the entire space of wetland to return to its original function. That in combination with preserving trees of value on the site that could serve for or to promote a positive upgrade of the habitat value of the space for birds and other similar species, that it would be again most prudent. The wetland in that space also functions, and I think was kind of uniformly confirmed. Not only is it there's a potential for wildlife habitat. Right now, as a manicured lawn, it's relatively low, but it does serve to infiltrate and treat surface waters. It does also pond water, so it has a drainage function as well. And by setting those spaces aside, you're preserving and enhancing the ability of those wetlands to function as they're supposed to. And it would be a benefit not only to the property, but to the neighborhood and the town as a whole. So those are the major items of focus. There's like 3 or 4 of them that probably requires more time and attention. I'm available to answer questions. And I know that the team is here on the behalf of the applicant to summarize the changes that they've made, and then also going to the peer reviewer to confirm what their findings are in terms of looking at those items of interest to us. Just one 10-second thing additionally, since we closed the hearing last time, we re-noticed this. We provided notice to the applicant what our areas of concern are. We republished about the continuance. We also provided an agenda to the town clerk for the regulations. And we think that we have a pretty complete housekeeping record for what's required for a public hearing.
Thank you, Rick. I guess moving on, Bob Maslin, Attorney Maslin, I think you have a presentation.
I do. It's brief, but please tell me if you can hear me, because I've had trouble with this microphone before.
Very light.
It's very low, so either you're gonna have to speak up or do something.
Give me a second and I'll switch.
Thank you.
This any better?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Good. All right. Okay, for the record, Attorney Robert Maslin representing the applicant, which is 175 Brookside LLC, the current owner. James Farrell is one of the principals. I see his name here. I'm not sure if Tom Tamburino is also here. Doug DeVesta, who you know, and Matt Pop are here. Jim McManus is at another hearing in another part of the state, and when he finishes that, he's going to call in. Hopefully, we're still going here. I do have just a few additional slides, and these are slides that, let's see, here we go. Start off with a list of the more significant changes, and then I'll have Doug go through his colored up rendering, and then Matt Pop, and then I'm not sure what you want to do after that. Maybe Joe Canis can speak. But we're not going to take long with this. The plan revisions since we last met, and these are the significant ones. There's always a few little ones here that are in there as well. Grading and retaining walls along the western boundary have been revised so that their height is lowered and the grading is reduced, and everything on that end of the project is outside the upland review area. Infiltration capacity for the sump pump, Mr. Chairman, you had a question about this. That calculation was done and verified between the two engineers. Revisions to the stormwater management system to address the peer review comments, that was done. Revised the stormwater maintenance plan to include level spreader maintenance, and that's also in the plan. Tree protection has been added to the revised plans, and I'm sure you'll hear a lot about the farmer's drain as well. And what we've done is increase the amount of wetland enhancement and plantings along the farmer's drain. It's not all of what Rick would like to have, but keeping in mind that there are no impacts to wetlands or watercourses here, and given the fact that you'll see the square footages in a minute, close to 3/4 of an acre of enhancements on a project of this size, I think are probably sufficient. Doug, do you have this? Do you see my screen here, Doug DeVesta?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Do you want to just walk us through the revisions?
Sure.
Briefly?
Okay, for the record, my name is Doug DeVesta, professional engineer. Bob, for one quick point, that Jim McManus is on the phone, is on the call now as well, so he's on.
Okay.
So if you have any questions with Jim, so.
Okay.
So revised plans, what we did is we provided a trash rack, which is shown to the right of the plan underneath the location map. Slide to the right there, Bob.
Down here.
Down here, but there's a detail as well on the upper right-hand corner of the plan.
Okay.
So we added the detail to the plan. We provided, under the recommendation from the arborist, the tree protection along Brookside Road. There's the detail of the trash rack right there. And what's outlined in blue on my plan, which is along Brookside Road on the north and south side of the road, and north and south side of the driveway along Brookside Road is the orange construction fence for tree protection as recommended by the arborist, and a couple of the trees along the driveway itself. We've also provided a tree protection, that maple tree on lot number 1, just north of the stockpiled area. You'll see it there in blue as well. And then we provided to the east of that tree protection where Bob is pointing right now is some additional tree protection along those trees in that area on lot number 1 as well. We also added a note that the capstones of the existing farmer's drain to be removed. And we also showed a split rail fence along the new meadow area on the north side of lot number 1 and the south side of lot number 2. We did on the operation and maintenance plan, we did add a statement regarding the level spreader that Joe Canis asked us to provide for the maintenance of the level spreaders on lot 1 and lot number 2. Eric had asked about an alternative about coming in off of Stonewall Lane. and removing the driveway from Brookside Road. We looked at that option, and it's not really feasible for several reasons. For one is the proposed septic system is located parallel to Stonewall Lane, so that would have to get relocated, and the area to relocate that would be where the reserve area is on the south and east corner of the property adjacent to Brookside Road. This would require to excavate for a force main from the house to that septic area, thus impacting the regulated area more than what it is right now. Also, where the septic system is right now is far from any regulated activity as well. The other reason why it's not feasible, we have to remove some of those large trees along the existing driveway. So again, there's some significant trees in there. We're trying to preserve those, trying to keep the character that's out there right now and can leave that alone. And the third reason would be that by removing this driveway, you're actually removing, quote unquote, a dam that will allow the water to back up in that area to reduce any flooding going downstream and continue that channel down. You would potentially increase the flow going in a southerly direction off site. So that would be a negative impact to the downstream neighbors. But by leaving the driveway there, it would provide for some kind of storage during a heavy rain event and allow it to be metered out through the current piping system. And the last question that Eric had asked last time was, before the pipe was the current pipe under the driveway was installed, what was there? I talked to the contractor who installed upgraded the pipes back in 2018, 2019, and it was just rocks under the driveway that allowed void space that allowed the water to flow underneath the driveway. So by putting the pipe in there, we've actually improved the flow capacity of the farmer's drain, and thus reducing any backup onto our property. Those are really those are the basic revisions to our plan and comments that the staff had at the last meeting.
Any questions of Doug before we put Matt on?
No, why don't you continue your presentation, Robert?
All right, Matt.
Good evening, Matthew Pop, landscape architect, professional wetland scientist with Environmental Land Solutions. The main change was the farmer's drain that runs just right there. We removed the cap stones from the farmer's drain, replaced them approximately anywhere from 10 to 15 feet off the channel, and now we have a new additional wet meadow area that's between those capstones. So there'd be a, I think it's about an 1,800 square feet additional addition to the wet meadow following the channel there. I made the meadow wider down towards the driveway because that's the lower portion of the wetland, and that's probably where it's going to be the wetter portion of the wetland. And I think that would be, you get more nutrient uptake from the plants. We also did propose some plantings in there. Probably not sure if they're really needed, but we did propose some Joe Pye weed and some blue flag iris, just again down in that lower section of that new additional wet meadow area. Let's see what else. So again, I think it comes to about 1,800 and maybe 50 square feet additional. You can see kind of above that area to the north, we have the big meadow area there. That's mostly all wet meadow, not all of it. To the sides is some upland meadow. And then if we go down to the south, we have, again, an additional meadow area that we're proposing. And those meadow areas will be fenced. But the new additional meadow, which we're proposing along the farmer's drain, again, that's just delineated by placing the capstones off to the side, approximately 10 feet to either side or so. And I think that's it.
I have a slide here with the square footages. laid out along the north and south, and these are your figures, right, Matt?
Yes, yeah, those are mine. Yep. So it's kind of broken up. So if we start up on the top, well, like I said, even at the top left, even once you go back, yeah, you can kind of see it where I had the upland area, the 4,210 square feet there. That's an upland area. Then the adjacent, actually, that's then adjacent is the wetland area on lot 2. Then it jumps to the wetland area on lot 1. And then you keep going over. There's the upland area right there, and adjacent to Brookside Road. Then we have the new farmer's drain wet meadow area, 1,850 square feet. And if we go down to the bottom of the sheet, you can see the additional areas there. Again, the wet meadow is just the middle section of that. It's like 3,300 square feet with the upland areas on either side of it. And again, that area is fenced. You can see the line with the square box. That's the fence symbol.
And this slide also has the areas broken out here and with total at the bottom of this insert. And so that's what we have, Mr. Chairman. I think maybe Rick suggested, well, first, if there's any questions from the commission, we could take them and then go over to Joe Canis.
Okay. Let's go around the commissioners. Bill Wright, do you have any questions, comments? Bill, you're on mute.
Unmute, Bill, please.
So sorry. Is Joe going to be doing some of the answers on these? I'm not sure how we're proceeding with this before we comment.
Well,
he doesn't need to. I'm curious if he is.
Yeah, Bill, you're probably right. Let's get Joe to speak here and put his comments in, and then we'll finish the applicant's presentations and Joe, and then we'll get to the commissioners. That's a good idea, Bill.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, great, thanks. For the record, Joseph Canis, a licensed professional engineer in the state of Connecticut, retained by the commission for the peer review of the application. I got the applicant's initial responses to my January 26th comments, and I prepared a written response on February 10th. And in my February 10th letter, as environmental officer Talamelli said, all the technical issues were addressed. I had no further comments on those, and I was satisfied with those. Two issues that I specifically wanted to bring to the attention of the commission, and one of these was the farmer's drain. My overall conclusion was that because of the elevation difference between this property and the properties to the north, that this was not the cause of flooding on the properties to the north, but there were some opportunities for improvement for this particular property, and also for wetland enhancement. And my recommendation was to remove the farmer's drain, and I'm glad to see that has taken place. So that said, that first comment that I wanted to bring to the commission's attention, I think has been addressed, subject to how the commission feels, if that wet meadow area needs to be enlarged or not. That's more of a wetlands functions and values, which tends to stray outside the stormwater wheelhouse. But from a drainage perspective, this is a better solution than what was presented last time. They also are proposing a trash rack. I had mentioned a stone check dam that would be a little bit further up in that channel, which was the farmer's drain. A trash rack is fine. It's I looked at the detail on the plan. It has it actually sits outside of the pipe. It has a slope up to it, so it's more easily accessible. So when looking at that detail, I'm satisfied with that. It's a lot better than the bar rack that was there previously, where you had to reach your hand into the pipe. So that's certainly an improvement. My second comment was also technical and was more technical in nature than the farmer's drain one, but it was a comment about connecting catch basin inlets in series. So basically connecting one catch basin, then it discharges to another catch basin. The risk is that it could potentially suspend some of the materials that have been captured in the sump. And there's a lot of differences of opinion on this particular issue. Different municipalities handle it differently. There are different schools of thought. Seeing that this is a residential lot, yeah, there is a potential for a resuspension as the flow from the upstream catch basin past the downstream catch basin. But because it's residential, I think there's more of a pride of ownership. Homeowners tend to take better care of their properties than they do on commercial lots. So I think because it's only 2 catch basins in series, for this application, I think it's fine. The commission has historically approved these to be connected in series. That's not to say that at some point there might not be a regulation change as part of your MS4 program that you might there might be different standards. Right now, there's no written standard about whether they should be connected in series or not, and that's another reason why this is, in my opinion, it's adequate. For this particular application. There's pre-treatment along the way. Also, there's sumps, so it's less concern on this type of application. But I did want to bring that to the commission's attention that that's something you might want to consider going forward. As the the town might need to change some of its regulations as part of the statewide MS4 program. But other than that, though, I'm satisfied with the changes that have been made. All the technical issues I had, like the 25 or whatever commas I had in my initial letter, have been addressed.
Thank you, Joe.
Sure.
Please, Rick.
The connection in series. If one of those drains clogs in a critical space, both would clog with a potential impact on drainage on that site. Is that correct?
There's always that potential, right? Right. The initial drawings actually had showed the catch basin. For example, on one catch basin, you have a direct line to the next junction box downstream, and then a second catch basin was actually like wide in, like so. The connection wasn't at a structure, but it was at an underground Y, and I think it's a more difficult situation to unclog, right? Because you can't get to that connection. So this is definitely an improvement over that previous one. Yeah, there is a potential for clogging, but I think again, a homeowner is going to be more cognizant of that type of situation. And like I said, there's no clear guidance on this. I did some research before tonight's meeting, and municipal standards are all over the place. Some want them connected in series, others don't. So I know, for example, in Stamford, catch basin to catch basin connections are prohibited. But that's the only adjoining municipality that I know that has a specific policy on catch basin to catch basin connections.
Could I make a comment on that as well? This is Doug DeVesta. We do have hoods on all the outlet pipes. So any kind of debris that's floating in there, leaves or sticks, whatever, if they do get in there, they will be trapped by the hoods before they get out into the pipe. So likelihood of getting any kind of a blockage would be very limited, very limited on that in that regards.
Okay. Joe, anything else?
That's all I had for tonight.
Robert, do you have anything else?
That's it. We'll take any questions.
Let's go through the commission members. First, Bill Wright.
Yeah, I think the improvements are good. so I'm good with that. The only comment I have in it, and you know what, it's really not dwelling on your application, but Joe brought it up in his write-up, is this history. It appears when there's an applicant goes ahead and does a demolition, a new applicant comes in years later and starts over again, and it appears the Fresh Meadow concept is lost. It's not part, you know, I don't think we should make an issue on this one about it, but it's something we ought to be talking about if that's the case, that there's a loophole. That's all I have to say.
Can I just address that, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sure, Bob.
This, the issue on the Fresh Meadow, as I understand it, and Joe can correct me if I'm wrong, was whether or not you include the surface of the driveway in the Fresh Meadow calculation. In other words, treat the driveway as if it's not there. And I think that's really what the issue is. This is not a demolition by a prior owner. It's demolition by the current owner. And even if it were the prior owner, all the more reason to, I mean, you wouldn't have to apply the Fresh Meadow approach. You'd be starting with a vacant site to begin with. But I think the issue is just limited to whether or not you count the driveway surface. And one way to look at it is whether you count it or don't count it, is it material to the overall drainage program on the site? And I would leave that for the engineers, but we're talking about surface runoff into an upland review area that's going to flow into a wetland. It's all going to function the way it's supposed to. And I don't think there's that much of a direct connection between, say, the drainage system on lot 1 or much of the drainage system on lot 2 with that driveway, just because of the way it's laid out. So I don't think it's material in this site. I understand the issue. We've had it come up, I think, in the past, but this really is, I believe, something that's more for the Planning and Zoning Commission to deal with, because it's in the zoning regulations, as well as the question about the series connected catch basins.
Right, and just,
Did I get that
sorry.
right, Candace?
Yeah, again, for the record, Joe Canis. Yeah, and right, yeah, the Fresh Meadow approach is, certainly in section 880 of the zoning regulations. And for this application, I actually did the calculation myself, just to make sure it didn't have an impact, and it didn't. It was like within a rounding error. It was that small of a impact on the overall calculation. But it was just a point that I picked up. Like, maybe somebody could take advantage of the regulation that way in a way it wasn't intended. That's not, that's certainly not what's happening here. But, just, as a thought, as a reminder to, more specifically the Planning and Zoning Commission, because they see these letters also, that, maybe there needs to be a little bit more specificity in that regulation to clarify the intent. But for the purposes of this application, it has no effect.
We can address this with the Planning and Zoning Commission as part of the subdivision application as well. So, so your comment, Mr. Wright, is well taken. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill, anything else?
No, that's it. Thanks.
Michael Urban?
No questions.
Thank you. Carolyn Bain?
Hi. I think the removal of the capstones from the farmer's drain is an improvement. However, I'm struck by how similar this application is to one that we approved a few months ago, another subdivision that had a similar topography. And I just felt that that was a much more elegant solution because it did restore the wetlands, which I personally think is really important. And I'm just, struck by the wetlands, the assessment, how much diligent monitoring will be required for the erosion and sediment controls along the wetland enhancement. And I just think it would be important to bring a greater level of restoration to the wetlands.
Okay, Carolyn, anything else?
Nope, that's it. Thanks.
Lauren?
Yeah, just quickly, can you just explain the scope of the removal of the invasives for the property?
Matt or?
Matt Pop, landscape architect. Mainly the invasive species be removed on the western portion of the site, the far western wooded area, and it's mainly a burning bush within that area. Actually, so it's kind of right in. Go over to the far left in that area right there. That's where there's invasive species are. Again, the burning bush. That's where it be removed. When you at the meadow areas that we're creating too, we just want to maybe take a look at that. That when we let those areas grow, that if we're getting purple loosestrife, we want to make sure that that's not in there. But again, we won't know that until the plants are able to grow out. Luckily on this site, and I didn't see any porcelainberry, which is kind of a tough plant to get rid of. So that's not there. So again, mainly it's just right now, it's just a burning bush, and then keeping an eye on the new meadow areas.
Okay, so that whole area on the west, right? To be clear.
Yeah, that's where it'd be. Yes, just that strip of woods right there. They gotta be careful that we're not off the site too, that we don't go off the site. So,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
Peter?
Yeah, so I'm going to make a comment which leads to a question to Joe Canis. So the comment I have is I'm very disappointed with this application at this stage. In the first time that we had a ability to comment, I had encouraged the applicants to make an investment into this property and a solution. And I'm feeling that we're making incremental additions, kind of like act and learn, and those incremental additions are a result of the commission's comments along the way. And what I was hoping for was a little more bigger thinking. So that leads to my question to Joe Canis. And I just wanted to be sure, Joe, that you saw the testimony of the neighbors as well as the flooding video from the north neighbors. I just want to be sure you saw that.
Yes, again, for the record, Joe Canis, I did see that flooding video. And,
my question is, in relation to the flooding video, are there things here that the applicant is not doing that would balance the proper usage of the property and resolve the neighbors' concerns? Or are you very confident from a professional engineering point of view that the incremental changes that the applicant is now presenting to us will resolve the neighboring issues?
okay, well, I think in my letter, I actually touched on this in just a little bit more detail, but initial when I saw that video was to take a look at the elevations of the properties. When you're out there in the field, it's pretty deceiving. That area looks very flat, going all the way up into the adjacent properties. But topographic map, it isn't as flat as it appears to the eye. Based on the mapping out there, I stepped through it here, but it shows that the low area between the driveway to 191 and 193 Brookside is at elevation 159, with the driveway to 191 Brookside near elevation 160. And the driveway to 193 Brookside slightly lower at approximately elevation 159.5. Now, the toe of the slope of on the downstream side of the 191 Brookside driveway is at elevation 158, and this is all based on town topography, which is pretty accurate. It's 1 foot contour interval. Now the top of the driveway at 175 Brookside is at elevation 155. So that means that driveway would have to be under 3 to 4 feet of water, right? So it would have to be, not only above the pipe, but over the driveway. And, the water was high, but, it certainly wasn't 4 feet over that driveway in those videos. So I don't think that driveway itself is, in the farmer's drain, is driving the flooding issues that we saw in those videos. That seems to be, it's more of a function of there's, probably cross culverts under those driveways. I haven't seen those driveways in person. I'm just looking at the topography map. But this, the 175 property is actually lower than the adjoining properties to the north. So that leads me to believe, in my professional opinion, that this particular site with the farmer's drain isn't driving the flooding issues on the adjoining properties. That said, there are, limited opportunities for improvement. For example, removing that farmer's drain, what that does, it does allow the water to flow more freely through there. Again, that's more of a benefit to 175. It isn't much of a benefit to the upstream properties because those are higher. In terms of a wetland benefit,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, in terms of a wetland benefit, I would say that, the goal, and again, from a stormwater management perspective, what the applicant is showing, achieves the stormwater goals. Is there anything else that they could do to help further flooding on those additional, those properties to the north? I would say not to my knowledge. Nothing, obvious jumps out at me. I would, if this was a reverse situation where this property was higher than the other properties, I would say absolutely. There's a lot more that could be done, but they're downstream of the other properties.
Okay, so from an engineering point of view, what, that you'd have to correct my perception here, because what I'm seeing is a pooling of water essentially blocked by this driveway. And as I speak to the neighbor to the south, across Stonewall, the brook is, not problemsome. There's no large flow at that end. So help me understand, is it totally an elevation issue as to why we're seeing this pooling? Because I think you're leading us to believe that the driveway has no impact on this.
Well, the issue, I believe up at the driveways to the north is, it's more of, those particular areas are flatter than what's down at 175. There's probably cross connections of, culverts beneath those driveways that, might have been adequate in the past, but as you know, rainfall totals have been increasing. We seem to get a 100-year storm, every other year, sometimes twice a year, right? So that's part of it. So that, the fact that you're seeing it more frequently, the storms are worse. But I would, the driveway at 175 to me, because of its elevation, is lower, much lower, 3 to 4 feet lower than what's on the adjacent properties. Leads me to believe that the conditions at 175 aren't causing that flooding. Now, for example, if the 175 Brookside driveway were 3 or 4 feet higher, absolutely, it would, that driveway, would be acting as a dam. It'd be causing the water to back up to that level. But there's 3 to 4 feet of relief right now because that 175 driveway sits below those other driveways.
Okay, so So I think just help me a little bit as a commissioner, because I think what we're trying to do here is balance a few interests, right? We're trying to assist the applicant to maximize the value of his property. We're trying to, and that may not be a legal objective of the board, but certainly I have no objection to that if we can get the legal objectives of the board to be accomplished. We're trying to preserve wetlands and water courses, and we have a farmer's drain, which I do believe is a water course. It may be a seasonal or intermittent water course, but I think it's a water course. And at the same time, we're trying to remediate flooding issues. So do you think that the proposal as it currently stands, not as to the first non-legal objective, but as to the two second objectives, do you think we've maximized our solution here, or is there more this applicant can do?
Okay, to answer your question, I believe right now, as the application is presented from a stormwater, strictly stormwater flooding perspective, the applicant has, will not make things worse on the adjacent property. I don't believe there's anything else that the applicant to further alleviate any flooding conditions on the adjacent property because of, just because of the elevation difference. From a, ecological perspective, that's outside my wheelhouse. From natural functions and values and that sort of thing. Is there more? I really can't answer that part of the question because that's not my expertise. You might need to rely on your environmental officer for that. But from a stormwater management perspective, I don't believe there's anything else that the applicant can do on their property that would benefit the upstream properties.
Thank you, Mr. Canis. No further questions.
No further questions? Okay. Hey, Joe, you came in favor of the trash rack? And no, because you originally talked about a stone check dam. And now you're saying a trash rack is sufficient. Why won't a trash rack get blocked with leaves and twigs?
Well, this particular trash rack, right? It does have the and a stone check dam could also get plugged. The trash rack, as designed, would allow the debris to ride up, because it's angled, right, and sit towards the top of the head. I was actually out at a site in Stratford that had a similar design today, and at a pump station, it worked very well. It's much better than what the bar rack that was there. If you remember in those videos, there was an actual it was actually set inside the pipe. This is exterior to the pipe, so it's just a lot easier to maintain because it sits on top of the rack instead of sitting inside the pipe. And the goal is really, to provide a visual cue. You can see if there is debris, you can see it up against an exterior trash rack versus, one that's inside the pipe. Mm-hmm. A stone check dam would accomplish the same thing. This is just a different way of achieving the same goal.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Joe. Are there any other commissioners that have any questions or comments before I open it up to the public? Okay, let's open it up to the public. Is there a member of the public that would like to speak?
Mr. Chairman, this is Paul Spillane, 191 Brookside Road. I'd love to speak if it's okay with you.
The floor is yours.
So first of all, Mr. Chairman, I want to reiterate, our support of this project next door. For the last 3.5 years, 4 years, we've had a vacant property, and it's never a good thing in the neighborhood. Number two, I'd like to thank the commission. You guys have done an amazing job, and women, sorry about that. Taking this to where it is. I guess I just have a couple comments for the engineers. We've lived here for 25 years, and I can tell you from 1996 when we had an oil spill from Brookside Nursery. in the state of Connecticut came out and removed about 4,000 yards of property and put some filters into our pipe system. We had one flood back in 95, 96. And really we were in pretty good shape once we removed the filter that they put in, which was unbeknownst to all of us. We had a great flow from then until probably about 2017, 18 when Mr. Sykes came to the commission and tried to get a remediation. Up until that point, the only flooding that really occurred on any of our properties was at his property because, as the engineers have pointed out, it is downhill to his and water flows downhill. And again, it all stopped at his driveway, which acted as a dam. But once he fixed his driveway and put a pipe in there, we had a great year. And it wasn't until they put the capstones in and the farmer's drain that collapsed that we now have a dam. And so my big concern is not with the farmer's drain itself, but is the maintenance. So if you look at the water that flows out of our property, and I'm sure the engineers can validate this, nothing can come out more than the 14-inch pipes that are going from the wetlands area and the nature center's property up above the Mr. Lincoln's property, all the way through to ours. So there's not going to be any more water coming through than that 14-inch pipe will allow. We have maintained that pipe every year rigorously with pulleys and cleaning it out so that we didn't prevent any water going down through our properties. But if you look at the property right now where the engineers and the 175 property owners have now looked, there is a 6-inch opening that comes out of our property and goes into an open trench, which we haven't addressed, but it literally is 6 inches wide, 6 inches deep. And that's just not enough to handle all the water that we have coming through. So I have just two big concerns. One, I've never seen in the town of Darien a no trespassing private property sign, but I'm really concerned that 175 Brookside is a hostile neighbor as opposed to a good neighbor. But they put no trespassing signs, and for the last 25 years, with the blessings of our neighbors, we've helped to keep that trench open and the water flowing from the top of Brookside Road, Stephen Mather, all the way down to Goodwives River. So I'm a little bit concerned that as we try to think about maintaining a farmer's drain, there's no intent on the part of the property owners to do it. The second concern I have is that all the lines that they've drawn show the farmer's drain being opened up from where they've blocked it, put a dam in, but there's about 60 feet from the woods to my property line, and we've maintained that trench with the blessings of the Sykes up until about a year or so ago when the property was sold. But we clean that out every single year. It's not great, but leaves and silt, probably 6 inches of silt a year, end up in that drain. So my big concern is if you drive around town and you look at the dams that they're talking about putting up, the racks, they've got to be maintained. And given the fact that we've got no trespassing signs to go into that property to help maintain it and keep it flowing, how can we feel good that that whatever changes they're going to make are going to be there? And we've now gone from one property owner to two property owners. So lot 2 has about 60 or 75 feet of the trench. They'll never see it. They're so far away, their house. And lot 1 has the rest of it. We really need to think about addressing this and keeping the trench open and flowing. But as I said, the engineers can tell me if I'm wrong. No more than 14 inches of water coming through those pipes can possibly go into that property. And I think the pipe that they have is 18 inches, so they'll never have an issue on their side. But we do have issues. And if we've had 14 floods in the property over the last 25 years, probably 8 to 10 of them have been since the farmer's drain and the capstones have been put in. So we need to make sure that drain is deep enough and wide enough to handle the flow, and most importantly, that it's maintained. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and really appreciate all the work you've done.
Thank you, Mr. Spillane. With the capstones, I think there is a general agreement. I believe Attorney Maslin mentioned it, that the capstones are going to be removed. So that's going to open up that channel because Because I think that, the capstones have been an impediment.
So,
So,
Mr. Chairman, can I just ask just one question? So I agree with that, but my bigger issue is that they're going to keep the side stones in. And if you went and looked at the distance right at the wood line, those side stones are no more than 6 inches apart. And 6 inches apart, 6 inches deep is certainly not going to take the flow of water coming out of a 14-inch pipe that we need to maintain. So I know that they said they're going to move the capstones out. They started at 15 feet, then it went to 10 feet on each side. I think that'll look absolutely spectacular. But I'm more concerned about the depth and the width of the farmer's drain itself and how that's going to be maintained. And thanks. Sorry for interrupting, but that's my big concern.
no problem. Robert, you want to handle that one?
Well, I can respond to a couple of points. First, let me just mention the no trespassing signs. This is, I mean, I don't want to be argumentative, but this is an active construction site. And it's just not appropriate for people not working on the site to be walking on the site for any reason. And that's the primary reason why they're there. We do have videos showing that people just walked on the site. Yes, they were cleaning out the opening of the pipe, but please don't take exception to the fact that the property owner is trying to protect an active construction site from people who shouldn't be walking around in it, running the risk of somebody getting hurt or something on the site. I think between Doug DeVesta and Joe Canis, I think what the elevations explain, and if you look at the photographs, there's another point to be made, and that is if there is freeboard above the capstones. And so if for some reason that farmer's drain doesn't convey water beneath the capstones, there's freeboard above it, and somewhere I have a picture of water actually flowing on top of it. That whole basin from the 175 driveway north to the property line has to fill with water, and that's a couple feet before it backs up onto the neighboring property. All the pictures I've seen and from when I've been out to the site, I didn't see any obstructions between the farmer's drain and the outflow end of the pipe coming from the adjacent property. Maybe there's something there I missed. If I could just make one other comment, I drive by this property every day on the way into work, and I look over it and I look at these 3 driveways, or actually 4 driveways. You have the driveway on 175, you have the driveway on the adjacent property to the north. I think it's Mr. Millard's driveway is the next one, and then there's another one north of that, and north of that driveway there's an open space. I looked through old zoning files, and back several years ago there was a site plan that involved that open space area, and there's a basin there that's actually labeled retention basin, not detention basin, which typically means the water is retained there and perks into the ground. So just as I do this, I'm not an engineer and I don't pretend to be one, but when I look at the videos that were supplied that are in the record that were taken from the middle of the 3 driveways that we're talking about, you have ponding or entrapment on the 2 driveways, and when the water gets high enough, it overtops the middle driveway. And if you look carefully at the videos, on both the northern and the southern driveways, there's a couple of feet of freeboard. I think a simple solution to the flooding on that middle driveway is to raise the elevation of the driveway so that it equals the elevation of the other 2 driveways. And that'll fix the problem with water overtopping the driveway during major storms. Oddly enough, the commission back a few years ago, when all of this was approved, asked to have stones that had toppled from the farmer's drain to be placed back on top, and I think that's what the intent was to comply with that, and that's how we wound up with those stones there in the first place. I don't know how true that is. It seems kind of weird to me that, French, that's not my phone. I don't know whose thing is. Anyhow, yes, back to the maintenance. Doug DeVesta prepared a maintenance plan. We could easily add a section in there about maintaining the farmer's drain. We keep calling it a farmer's drain, but just maintain it, check it periodically, make sure it's free of debris and all that. And hopefully that would make it a little easier to deal with. That I kind of long-winded, but Doug, do you have anything to add to that? Doug,
No, I think you covered it pretty well, Bob, but I just, I mean, I do have the town topo map that I could share, and I think the commissioners would be able to see the difference in elevation, but I think Joe pretty much said it pretty clearly that, our elevation relative to 191, 193, and 205 Brookside are much, much higher than what we are, and would have to have to overflow our driveway at 175 to have any potential flooding on the 3 properties to the north of us.
Just one other point, Mr. Chairman. I did speak with Mr. Ewan, I think it is. He lives across Stonewall Lane on the corner early on, and I sent him the whole application, or at least I gave him the link to it so he could look at it at his leisure. And his concern was obviously the downstream water flow. And I haven't heard from him since, so I don't know if he has any comments one way or the other. And I didn't see anything submitted from him. But one thing to remember here is we're not allowed to increase the downstream flow. That's by statute and that's by the regulations. And we can't increase the flow into that downstream system during the 2 through 50-year storm events by the regulations. And just to be clear, and Doug can correct me if I'm wrong, but the lighter storms, maybe not the 50, but the lighter storms will not reach the inlet capacity of the pipe at the driveway. So we have a couple of things that we have to keep in mind here in maintaining this farmer's drain. And I think Joe Canis said with respect to flooding and backup drainage and all of that, there's not much more we can do on this site to alleviate any of that upstream flooding and backup.
Attorney Maslin, I'm referring to page 3 of your February 23rd letter to me. And on the top, it says, in response to comments of the commission and staff, the applicant has agreed to remove the capstones from the farmer's drain, leaving the exposed channel. Do your previous comments change that statement?
What do you mean?
Okay, has the applicant in your February 23rd letter, you say you agree to remove the capstones from the farmer's drain? Okay. What I'm seeing here is either you're saying to me that's pretty definitive that the capstones are gone. Okay.
No, did I say something that was inconsistent with that just now?
Well, because you're talking about, well, the capstones, even if they fell in, there's freeboard, it would go over, et cetera, et cetera. I would like to make it clear that so to clear up any potential confusion here, that the applicant has agreed to remove the capstones from the farmer's drain as per your letter. So I guess for me there was there as to whether the capstones are going to be removed.
Okay, just to be clear, Mr. Chairman, I was talking about the history of this, not about what we're going forward.
Yep.
And the history was there was discussion in 2018 or whenever it was about replacing stones that had fallen down. And that's what I was talking about. I wasn't talking about not removing them now. And
No.
the other thing I did say was I've seen photographs of water actually flowing on top of the stones unrestricted. So that's just me talking about the history of my own observations and not backing off our agreement to take the stones off.
Okay. Appreciate it. Thank you for clarification. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I just clarify a couple things? One, the downstream discussion, it just makes me laugh. There's no more water that can go through except for in the pipe that's under the driveway. And that I believe is an 18-inch pipe, and we're pumping 14 inches of water. So the downstream discussion is not even a discussion. Number two, if the 175 property owners wanted to say that it was a construction site, I would have been more than happy to have a construction site there. They chose to put up no trespassing. And what really worries me is every time I hear from them, it seems like it's going to be a hostile environment. Number three, putting in the capstones has raised the water height about 6 to 12 inches. So instead of having a nice flow all the way down to their pipe, they've decided to put a dam in, and they've made it 6 inches wide. So when you look at what's backed up, it's all caused by the capstones, the height, and the width of their trench. And if they're willing to make it deep enough and clean enough and keep it maintained, we will have no flooding and we will have no issues. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Spillane.
If it's Bob Lincoln, 205 Brookside Road, if I could add to that, I think there's a misconception by all parties that we're looking for 175 to eliminate ponding, which is not what we're looking for this applicant to do. What we're looking for the applicant to do is allow 14 inches of water to flow naturally and freely through this farmer's drain into their culvert and downstream. That's it. And it strikes me that very little discussion by the applicants on what they're doing with the drain itself. Like, are they going to clean it? Are they going to dig a proper trench of width and depth to take 14 inches of water? No commentary on that, which to me is striking. So that our request seems very reasonable. But what strikes me and what Mr. Spillane is kind of articulating is why are we getting so much pushback on a simple matter? Remove the capstones. Great. We're thrilled, by the way, by the commission and the applicant on that step. But if we have 14 inches of water, exiting 175, can we have a trench that can accommodate 14 inches of water going to an 18-inch pipe at the culvert? It seems very reasonable. And for the life of me, I do not understand why the applicant has so much heartburn over this simple fix. And I'd like them to address it or the commission to address it. I just don't understand it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Lincoln.
I can address that. I'll try anyway, Mr. Chairman, if I can.
Sure, please.
The pipe under the driveway at 175 Brookside is not 18 inches, it's 12 inches. The capstones being removed is something we've already committed to. There's no pushback there. We've agreed to add a provision in the stormwater management plan, which is already required. We've agreed to add a provision dealing with maintaining this trench. I'm not sure what pushback Mr. Lincoln is referring to, and I don't know where the dam is that he's referring to, because we're not putting a dam in anywhere here.
Well, if I may, I've heard nothing from the applicant on what they're doing. Sorry.
And maybe we weren't clear, but I'm not sure where the dam is.
Well, I think we have a lot of photographic evidence and a lot of historical evidence that this water meets a very small and clogged channel at Mr. Spillane's property. And what I'm struck by is I've heard nothing from the applicants on them actually cleaning the trench itself and making sure it's wide and deep enough to accept the water that's going into it. It's almost like that topic's been totally avoided. And that's the concern. It's sort of like you guys have some problem that I can't define as to why you can't simply say, we're going to take the water that exits Mr. Splain's property, and we're going to ensure that that trench is deep and wide enough to accept that water, and we're going to maintain it. And we're happy. I didn't hear one word about you cleaning or actually working on the trench itself in this entire presentation. And to me, that's a very obvious thing to address. And that's why I'm raising the pushback, because it's not being addressed.
Mr. Chairman, we've addressed that. We've addressed that, and I'm not sure what else we can say.
Excuse me for a second. Rick Taniamelli would like to speak.
Experience. There's, but I observed there's nothing that needs
Can't
to
hear
be
you, Rick.
that needs to be done up. There's nothing that needs to be done upstairs of the property. Remedy. I think there's a condition on this property that the opportunity is there to make the condition for everybody, not only the abutting property owner, this property owner, anybody who buys this at some point, to make the condition better. Removal of the capstones was a good, I think, first step. As I said from day one, when I first letter, I think back in December, my opinion that you can't just be the side stone, and that you have a very narrow channel itself. I do believe that, and from not only from a drainage perspective, civil engineering, but from an ecological perspective, better remedy here is to not only remove the capstone, but need to stable, simple detail of a section that is will contain the appropriate amount of water from 20 feet of what they would be from the north property boundary to the and being stable means regrading the side slope to actually forming a real channel. And in addition, that will prevent, they are not side there to prevent long-term maintenance. It's a very simple remedy. It's remove the stone, create a stable channel, and stable channel not only provides real true ecological value here with exposing the storm water to sunlight and irrigation and all the good things that you do from having an open channel, but it's also accessible. You can do maintenance, and a channel itself will, with properly banks, with proper banks on it, is going to, especially in the north, they're extraordinarily steep, is that it prevents a long-term erosion problem as well. This is a simple remedy that I think is beneficial to everybody here. I have, and that's, I think the drain, as far as maintenance, yes, there's going to be a maintenance plan that can be enhanced, however, the applicant working with staff can do that satisfactorily addresses it, and perhaps to even put something on the land record that makes it, that gives notice to a prospective property owner that it's their responsibility to do it. A lot of it, though, is really nothing more than common sense. You see the channel clogged, unclog the channel. I mean, it really is nothing more than that. And I am very pleased that they've come up with a trash rack that Joe is satisfied with. Nothing that's vertical that's going to allow it to ramp up into, again, not clog the channel. What's the limiting factor here is the size of the pipe under the driveway. So I don't think we have an issue downstream. I don't think we have an issue upstream. I do think what we have is a condition on the property that is in fact a maintenance issue. Eliminate the farmer's drain to a stable channel. There's drainage and there's maintenance and there's ecological benefits to doing so. It's not a lot of work, it's not a lot of cost, and it's going to be a good long-term solution to a problem. I'm always big on, you know, if you're going to not have to address something, don't address it. If it's, you know, don't make me go out there and pull things out if I don't have to. Don't make me have to spend $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 to stick the stones back up again. I think you have a reasonable solution that everybody should warm up to make the project move forward and everybody be satisfied with what's going on.
Thank you, Rick.
I have other comments though about the mitigation, if you want to get into that.
You want to do that, or you want to hear more from the public?
Sure.
You want to hear? Is there anybody else from the public that would like to speak? Going twice. Anybody else from the public that would like to speak? Okay, Rick, you want to go?
Yeah, and again, I think that the applicant has made really substantial progress from the beginning and over the duration of several projects that have come before the EPC. But I am firm in my standing that, you know, as a subdivision, it's supposed to be, the process is supposed to lend itself to allowing for reasonable development, making sure a residential project has room for a home, room for a septic that's going to function well, room for drainage to ensure there's no adverse impact. And it seems like this applicant has made a real effort over time and has developed plans to do that. And with some modifications of this farmer's drain, I think we make a problem that affects not only this owner, but future owners and the abutters. I think it will go away and everybody will be satisfied with that. What's missing from, in some ways, missing from this whole equation here is that you're supposed to be taking all those technical elements and looking at it in terms of what the resources here are on the property. And the task of a subdivision is to make sure that they meld together nicely. And I think what we're forgetting here is we're forgetting about the wetlands, which is our primary charge. I believe that again, inexpensively and with a great benefit from it, and certainly an applicant can make it a true amenity for a property, the improvements to the wetland should affect all the wetlands. And again, if in my opinion, it doesn't take much more with these conditions that are out here, with the functions and values that have been identified by even the applicant's own consultants, is that allow it to be a wet meadow, manage it as a wet meadow, apply it to all the wetlands in this space. I don't know of any environmental professional that should be able to say that allowing manicured lawns to segment an area of meadow with allowing, you know, there will be building and
Just a second. Elsa, can you figure out what that noise is?
Are you still hearing it right now?
No. What? Okay. Well, no, thank you.
so I don't think there's anybody would be able to really legitimately say, if we're going to fertilize and have a manicured lawn, and segmenting two sections of restored spaces is really a true benefit. And I heard Ms. Bain talk about previously, you know, a subdivision. When I first came here, there was a subdivision on the table on Half Mile Road. Quite honestly, the fact packages with that project and this project, and I think some of the consultants were involved in both, are completely the same. And is that the entire wetland was was allowed to go back to a wet meadow. They did a demarcation feature. They did perimeter plantings, and everybody was satisfied with what the outcome was. The contractor and developer had their two lots, and they had an amenity on the site. I mean, I'm looking back at the wetland mitigation plan that was prepared for that site, as well as the report in the presentation. And they talk about wetlands in the upland review area converted from lawn to high quality meadow with rocks placed along the edge of the mitigation areas. It seems that is applicable. Buffer areas stretching along the roads will be enhanced with native shrubs and trees. Stream channels shall be stabilized with deep root systems of native meadow plants. Plantings and root systems will provide functional filter to stormwater runoff. Overall, the plan will benefit wetlands, watercourses, and eliminate and substantially reduce impacts. Again, the fact package is exactly the same. I think the board should apply the same standard to this development as it did right up the road. And again, it's not an expensive, I mean, you can put as much as you want into it, but the initial remedy is allow it to return to a wet meadow, do seasonal, it's management. It's allowing it to restore, to grow, to cut it only seasonally, to remove any invasives, to perhaps add a couple of plantings here and there. It can be, and then to define it. And in this case, if they put some kind of demarcation feature along the wetland boundary, it has no impact at all on the ability of this applicant to develop those sites. Not at all. Does it encroach on any part of the site, even the drainage system? And you would have an environmental, it's an amenity. It's a positive thing. And you look, downstream across the road. Yes, there's a road there, yes, but downstream, it's wetland, and it's wooded wetland. To the north, there are lawns there on a couple properties, but then upstream beyond that, there was another subdivision that they went through great pains. There's an open space preserve, completely undeveloped, in a 3-lot subdivision, and I think Mr. DeVesta was involved in that at the time too, from what I see in the record, is that they preserve the wetland. And again, compared to what you're doing, we need to have some consistency in how we review things. Wetland mitigation plan, half-mile lane, that provides all those elements that we're talking about. And here we're going to have manicured lawn that segments the wetland itself. I think that's important, and I think it's important that, again, let's avoid the maintenance issue. Avoiding the maintenance issue is you do a cross-section of a channel that is appropriately sized and stable. You allow for some planting, maybe have some random placement of a stone or two, but use the trash rack, and I think that you have a package here that allows for the overall development, and it is a good sound project that everybody can be satisfied with.
Thank you, Rick. What do you want to do from here? Does the applicant want to comment on this, on Rick's?
I can, if you
Please
like.
do. Please do.
I was not able to understand most of what Rick said, unfortunately.
Oh, geez.
I got the gist of it. It was muffled and for some reason not very clear. But a couple of things he mentioned. Something on the land records. Well, we now have a standard practice on the planning and zoning side where new developments are required to have a notice of stormwater maintenance plan recorded on the land records. And that'll happen here as well. So there will be notice. The notice directs whoever wants to look, and it's certainly going to be future owners of these two properties, because each one will have a separate plan, or maybe it's a single plan for both. I'm not quite sure how the Planning and Zoning Commission is going to handle that, but that will be on the land records, and it'll direct the owners to the Planning and Zoning Department, to the file, to see it. And now, all these things are online anyway, so it's pretty easy for an owner to, A, get notice, and B, see what they have to do to maintain the stormwater management, and we've already agreed to include a provision for this trench. With respect to Half Mile Road, that keeps being brought up. Different owner, different project. I happen to be the attorney on it, but I can't speak for one and then make another owner do the same thing. It's really an owner question, and I don't think it's really a good idea to say, well, okay, I was involved or Doug DeVesta was involved in another project, and therefore we should do the same thing here. We have different client here. With respect to the amount or area that's involved, we're close to a total of 3/4 of an acre of enhancements and over a half acre of enhancements in wetland areas themselves. That's roughly 2 times the area that was involved on Half Mile Road. So there's a significant difference there. The other thing that's worth mentioning is in subdivision regulation, if you have a subdivision with 3 or more lots, you're required to set aside 10% of the land area as open space, which is probably one of the reasons why the 3-lot subdivision north of here has a defined open space that happens to be in a wetland, and there's a retention basin there, and that's what I mentioned before. This is not a 3-lot subdivision. The Wetlands Commission cannot require a conservation easement. They can consider things like that, but they can't require it. And the Planning and Zoning Commission is not able to require an open space dedication. And it's because of the size of the lot, the number of lots in the subdivision, and that's just the way the law is. Back to what we've done here. We started with a smaller amount of mitigation, but that, or enhancements, that itself was more than what the commission previously approved for a 2-lot subdivision that's very similar to this on this site. And so now we're substantially more than what was previously approved. I understand Rick would like to see all of the wetland turned back into a wet meadow, but we're not required to do that. We'd be required to do it if there were negative impacts to wetlands and a watercourse as a result of the development of these 2 lots. We've been talking about straightening out a drainage issue that has to do with the trench, but that's a separate issue from building 2 houses with septic systems and independent drainage systems and all the rest of the site development features on these 2 lots. So our view is this is a good application. We've agreed and committed to remove the capstones, to maintain the trench. I think there's some disagreement with the neighbors about what the physics is here, water levels and flows and all of that. But I think what Joe Candace said should cover this issue. This land here is lower than the upstream properties, and this would have to flood to a significant level before it has an impact upstream. There may be an occasional blockage. There may be leaves stacked up along the property boundary along the north here that somehow get into the trench when it rains, but that's all part of maintaining it. Going back to the video, there were 2 videos that I showed. I think maybe there's 4, but they were taken during major storms. The one video that shows the pipe being clogged, I think is worth noting. The current owner didn't own the property then. The person who was responsible for putting in that pipe in the first place was a contract purchaser who, after the pipe was put in and things were done to the farmer's drain, walked away from the project and got distracted in other ways and is no longer with us. It wasn't our fault. Our clients didn't put that 3 steel rod trash rack, if you will, inside the pipe. I'm not sure why they would have put it inside the pipe, because you start trapping debris there and it's just, there's got no place to go and it's going to block the pipe. All that stuff is being addressed here. That pipe now is open. We don't know who took those pipes out, or the rods out, but probably was a good idea. And now there'll be an external trash rack, a basin at the opening for stuff to fall out, a maintenance plan. This is all going to work, I think, fine. And I think we have a good application at this point. We've done some pretty significant improvements. The other thing I'd like to ask, Mr. Chairman, is we have to go to the Planning and Zoning Commission for this. Our public hearing is coming up. And there's really 2 parts to the EPC application. One is a report on the subdivision, and the second is a license to conduct regulated activities. And I know in the past we've done both. I'm not sure how you would do this. If you close the hearing tonight, my guess is you'll not make a formal decision until Rick drafts up a resolution of conditions and everything for the next meeting, which probably is the first week of next month. But if we could get a report of some sort for the commission, we can get started with that part of the process. Other than that, I don't have anything else to add, and if anybody has any final questions, we're happy to try to answer them.
Okay, Rick, answer Attorney Maslin's report on subdivision. Is that a? I mean, that's falls on your lap. Is that a? We can hear you.
I think it's something that status and the expectations over the next 3 or 4 for the commission.
Okay.
I couldn't hear Rick.
I said,
So what he said, he can work on something so that the planning and zoning can get the report on the subdivision.
Okay.
Okay, and then obviously as a commission we have to talk about this and come up with with our approvals, conditions, and things like that.
Mr. Chairman, if I can just make one comment. This drain, if it weren't for the fact that there's wetlands, or that you could classify this as a intermittent water course, this would be a focus of the planning and zoning process, because it has to do with drainage. And they have as much jurisdiction, and maybe even more, over how drainage is handled on a subdivision. And so if you're concerned at all that something is going to slip past the EPC and then slip past the Planning and Zoning Commission, I really don't see that happening. I think this is obviously, if you put in your report that you're concerned about drainage, you've talked about things, we've committed to do things, the Planning and Zoning Commission will pick up on that and maybe tweak it further. I don't know what they're going to do. We haven't been down that process yet. But I just wanted to mention that they're going to be heavily focused on what happens with this farmer's drain.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Robert. I would agree with you that they'll be focused on that, and obviously they focus on the entire 4+ acre lot. We tend to focus in on the inland wetlands and water courses and the and the upland review areas. So, which is our bailiwick as a commission.
Right.
So, all right, before I get a motion to close this, is there anybody else who would like to speak? Commission members, public? No? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I just had one point of, sorry, Mike Lerman, please go.
So, it seems like the crux of the neighbor's concern is maintenance of this drain. Would the applicant consider an easement for maintenance to the neighbors, where the easement was very restrictive to that activity? That's my only comment.
I would say that I'm not in a position to answer that question right now because of the way these meetings are set up. We'll talk about it among ourselves and be able to answer that question at planning and zoning.
All right, well, if you could let Rick Talamelli know also, Robert, I'd appreciate that.
There's no easement, there's no drainage easement now, and we do have artificial drainage going into the property now, but there's no formal easement, and I think going forward, the drainage maintenance plan is probably going to be sufficient, but we'll talk about the possibility of an easement.
Well, the anecdote, Bob, is you get to know your neighbors in the middle of the night in a storm, and right, and and the other colloquialism is, it takes a village. So understanding that the builders are reputable folks, and I do believe them to be good people, they're not going to be the long-term owners of the property. And the folks that have been speaking this evening obviously have, I think, a legitimate concern. And leave it to you. You're the big guy to see if maybe there's a solution to the comments that the neighbors have been posing. That's all I got.
Okay. When people pay what they're going to pay for this property when it's finished, they're going to pay attention. I don't have any doubt about that. I think one of the problems was over the last few years was the result of the property being vacant and stuff happening to it that nobody was tending to but the neighbors. That's unfortunate, but I think going forward that circumstance is most likely not going to happen.
Peter McGinnis?
Yeah, it was more a point of information. I know we've been using the term capstone. Capstone to me has a defined term, which is the stones that are on the upper edge of a pool or a drain. So when we're talking capstone, just want to be sure, and this maybe goes to the final maintenance agreement. We're talking about all the stones or all the large stones that are inclusive of those in the bed of this farmer's drain. Is that right?
Capstones, I understand, are the stones that are on top of the channel. So water flows underneath it.
That would be my understanding also. So I guess my question is, as I looked at the drain, I didn't see any stones at the top. I saw a lot of stones that had maybe fallen into the drain. So what are we really talking about when we were talking about capstones?
I think there's water flowing under those stones. Right? Doug, is that your understanding?
Yes, that's correct, Bob. That's just the water flows under the stones. Any stones that are on top that you see that are flush with the existing grade right now, those would be removed and allow it to be an open channel at that point.
Right, but I think his question is, or my question is, there's a channel that flows under those stones currently, right?
Correct.
Or am I-
Correct, under the top, under the stones on the top.
Okay.
Right.
All right, I
Plus,
think
you know,
I
I would just
understand
like-
the answer, but I think this comes down to the maintenance agreement, so I'll wait until we see the version of it. And, you know, certainly I didn't do a close examination of the farmer's drain, but capstone to me is along the top edge, but in any event, I want to be sure we get the nomenclature right in the agreement. I saw stones in the bed. Yeah, this is great, Bob, if you're the one.
And you can see,
Thank you.
you can see there's stones right up to the culvert, and then,
Yep.
but you also see water flowing on top. So, and this is during the demolition, the fences here. This was taken in January after a storm, 1.25 inch storm. So, you know, you could see flows there. Let me just see if yeah, see it's how it's coming out from underneath these stones.
Okay. Right.
No, it's interesting, Robert, because I took I have a picture of it where, you know, I see many of the capstones that have, you know, they're not capstones anymore because they've sort of fallen in. So they've fallen into the river. So, you know, they've fallen into the stream. So, so my definition of capstones would include those.
Yeah, and here's another picture of the same thing, but the water's flowing on top, and it's not overflowing the banks. Now, granted, you know, all these stones are here, the water's still flowing, we're going to take them out, there's no question about that. So I hope you didn't, I hope there's no confusion about that. But this is a 2.81 inch rainstorm, which is pretty good rainstorm. But again, these are coming out and the water's going to flow more freely. And just one other thing to keep in mind is, even if this backs up, there's plenty of storage capacity before you get up to the elevation where the property boundary is. So as long as this opening is maintained and the trash rack is doing its job, the water flow is going to go the way it is here without the stones, and there won't be any problem on the neighbor's property, at least not as a result of anything here.
Okay, so I think we're saying the same thing, or at least the thing I was intending, which is.
I think we are. We're talking about semantics.
We're talking about stones, period.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, with that, is there anybody else who would like to speak? Okay,
I would.
Yes.
Could I just get clarification from the engineers on something? Because this came up at our last meeting as well. If the channel is widened at all, but the size of the pipe going under the driveway remains the same, the volume of water on the downstream neighbor doesn't change. Is that correct?
Not necessarily, but Doug, you want to address that?
Yeah, I mean, if the channel gets changed in terms of, you know, you make it into a more, I guess I'll call it a smoother channel, the flow's going to get through that property faster. It's going to build up more onto our property and then be pushed through the 12-inch pipe that's there that potentially could put more water downstream, just for the fact that it goes to the property downstream faster than it would be if it had to went to a rougher surface area.
So, Mr. Chairman, can I speak? So, Doug, you're basically saying that you are acting as a dam for our property, which is exactly what we're trying to say. The question was simple. Can any more water get through the pipe than the pipe can handle? And the answer to that is no. Is that correct, or is that a
But there's also an elevation difference too. Yes, we can pond water on our property, but we can also
the pipe can only handle what the pipe can handle. Is that correct?
What's the question again?
The pipe can only handle what the pipe can handle. And I'd love to have you comment one more time, because in one of your reports, you say it's a 12-inch pipe, a 15-inch pipe, an 18-inch pipe. So now you've determined it's a 12-inch pipe.
There's a 12-inch pipe underneath the driveway, and then it goes up to an 18-inch pipe from the south side of the driveway to the catch basin on Stonewall Lane.
So you've never been on the property, but now you're definitively saying it's a 12-inch pipe. But in your first report last month, you said it was a 15-inch pipe, an 18-inch pipe, a 14-inch pipe. But now you're definitively saying it's a 12-inch pipe. So you're a professional engineer. Is it a 12-inch pipe or a 14-inch pipe or an 18-inch pipe?
I'm gonna start. Hey, hold on a second, guys. One is every question and comment should be directed to me, the chairman.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and then going forward, I'll figure out who I believe is the best person to answer that question. Okay. So going forward, hey Doug, do you want to clarify, because I think you have several times now, the size of the pipes?
Yes, and to be honest, I've been on this property multiple times. I was involved in this project back in 2018, 2019. We did improve the channel from the wood line down to the head wall, and the pipe that was changed out. As I mentioned earlier on the meeting, that Eric asked about what was under the driveway previous to any work doing on the property. It was just stones under the driveway that was replaced with a 12-inch corrugated plastic pipe. Then it was converted to an 18-inch pipe from the south end of the driveway to the Stonewall Lane.
Okay, so we've clarified that. So the question of a 12-inch pipe can only handle so much water. It depends on the pressure of the water, but it can only handle whatever a 12-inch pipe can handle as it flows down from the north. I don't see that as a and the capacity there on this should be able to handle that. Should be able to handle a lot of flow coming down, because there's what, 4 feet elevation difference there, right? So
that's correct, Eric.
So I think Mr. Connor spoke to that earlier. That's what I know. All right. Mr. Spillane, would you like to continue the comments? Questions?
No, Mr. Chairman, I just was curious as to why they would have a 12-inch pipe go into an 18-inch pipe.
I have no idea. That's what, hey, Doug, do you want to handle that one? Why you did that? Because as you mentioned, I remember being on the property with you when it was being done. And,
I just believe that we didn't want to, again, increase the flows downstream. If you went to an 18-inch pipe all the way through, then we would be definitely increasing the flow. We try to keep the same size opening that was out there under the stone without increasing the flows downstream and causing a problem downstream. And then without destroying the whole head wall, they were able to slide a 12-inch pipe through that head wall and then put it without going through and destroying the whole head wall. So again, by increasing the pipe size, we would increase the flow downstream. By leaving a 12-inch pipe, provides some storage behind it and also keeps the flow continuing through to Stonewall.
okay. Thank you, Doug. Is there anyone who would like to speak further on this application? Okay. I'm going to make a motion to close the public hearing. Peter McGinnis, may I have a motion to close the public hearing?
I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing at this point.
Okay, Carolyn Bain, can I have a second?
Yes, I second that we close the public hearing.
Okay, great. Then without objection, so moved 6-0. And the EPC 42/2021 is now closed. The public hearing is closed. Moving on our agenda, we get to the approval of minutes. All commission members have received the revised minute, and we have I think there were some typos and things like that. Is there Any further questions or comments? The only one that I had, Rick, and I should have mentioned this, is because I missed, it stated in the beginning that I missed the first part of the meeting. You should come in. I came in at 7:49. I think it was when I came in.
Mhm.
Okay, so just make sure that I'm added in.
Yeah, I did.
You did? I thought, okay, then I apologize. I missed it.
Yeah, approximately 7:49.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? No? Okay. Then, yes, I need a motion to approve. Lauren? Motion to approve? The minutes?
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from February.
Okay, Bill Wright, may I have a second?
Second. I'll second that. There we go.
Okay. Without objection, so moved. Since I missed the first 49 minutes of the meeting, I'm going to abstain just on principle. And so it'll be, okay. And then moving to other business.
Good conduct.
Okay. EPC EPC 09-2017 Ironwood Lane, R. Stelman and M. Stelman, modification of EPC permit 09-2017 to allow the construction of a covered porch within close proximity to the wetlands and watercourses. The property lies along the north side of Ironwood Lane, approximately 460 feet east of Hamilton Lane, and is identified as map number 10, lot number 36. The zone is R1, and it's plus or minus 2.48 acres.
This is a modification of an existing permit. The brief history of the project is there was an application that had been granted by the EPC that came on the heels of as part of a proposal to construct certain residential additions on this property. The EPC's application specifically related to certain drainage improvements, straight line pipes to assist in the removal of stormwater from the basement groundwater and or roof drains in order to make it a more successful, trouble-free project. There was on this, the building permit was pursued. The additions it's still an ongoing construction project. They're substantially built, winterized, and they're currently working indoors. The applicant's proposal includes a certain residential additions and a deck off to the one plane of the house, addition in the patio, another plane of the house, and again, the drainage improvements, some grading. The applicant has since come back to the EPC and said, in lieu of the deck that was proposed on the house, that he would like to construct a covered porch, and the porch being involving additional encroachments into the regulated areas necessitated that he come back for a modification of permit. And under this permit modification, the applicant had been asked to ensure that there's proper water quality measures employed, such as a sediment and erosion control plan, and to look diligently at the issue of drainage and water quality as a result of this improvement. It is noted that the pipes for the subsurface structures have been brought out to the brook. There were a couple of areas where infiltration had been installed, and to ensure that the new covered porch will not have an adverse impact on drainage and adjoining properties, regulated areas, the current conditions on the site. An engineer, Connecticut engineer, was hired, and he prepared a plan and a report to show that by adding some additional infiltration on the same limits of what has been installed already, that there will be no adverse impact on drainage in adjoining properties. Again, just for the record, that the covered porch is in a space that was currently slated for impact. It is more additional impervious, and it is not anticipated that the project will adversely result in an adverse impact to the wetlands and watercourses. And I have developed certain conditions, if the board chooses to approve the application, that should be applied. One thing to note is that, as with several of these other projects this evening, the engineer has prepared a plan. The concept has been referred to DPW for independent review to ensure that it is these things correctly and there's not a waste of resources here. They had some preliminary comments, and the applicant is working now through their engineer to address those comments. So again, like the other applications that had been before us, I included a condition that in advance of a building permit for the additional work on the project or modification of that building permit, that the drainage element has to be successfully addressed to the satisfaction of DPW.
So in my layman's language, perk test.
Part of it is, yeah.
Because I don't want an infiltrator below water level.
Soil test.
Okay, all right. Okay.
With that, I think it's a pretty straightforward modification of the existing application.
So then once DPW goes to that, they'll have the perk test results, et cetera, to be sure that whatever infiltrator is modified or added to.
If it has to be tweaked in some way, Mr. Osterfine will ensure that
That's in his comments.
The plan be remedied and that it will be successful.
Does any of the commission members have a question or comment? Yes, Mr. Wright.
Since this is it's coming to me new, I didn't see any 2017 requirements or what they were supposed to do, unless I missed that on my package. So that'd be my first comment, is that unless we see what they were supposed to do in 2017, did they do that? There's an intermittent water course up on the north side there that's not even on the map that we were given as a wetlands, and it certainly is. So maybe I don't have all the details that came in the packet, but it's not, I don't think it's good enough to move on until we get all that looked at.
Okay, Rick. The water course on the north side.
Actually, there was a representation on here of what was installed on the plan itself. And again, Wayne DeVanto is here.
That's we're talking about the drainage plan?
Yes, if you look on the drainage plan.
I do, and I don't see anything from what they were supposed to do in 2017.
Oh, so it's actually on there. So they show, they don't show the point going through the brook. They do show the infiltration just beyond the addition.
I assume that when they did that, they had to have some kind of plantings and other things along that water course, or no?
There were provisions for a couple plantings. I do not believe that they have been done or accomplished to date, but the other permit remains in full force and effect. And if you note, because it was omitted from the last time the EPC looked at it, I put all planting required by condition of EPC number 29-2017 shall be installed under supervision of a qualified professional and certified in writing as complete and viable prior to issuance of a zoning approval.
Okay, well, my sense is that before we give them anything else, why don't we see that they've done what they were supposed to do the first time? Just it's 5 years ago, and that's my feeling, is that let's see what they put your money where your mouth was and get that stuff done before we give them any more approvals.
Let the applicant speak.
Yeah,
Mr. Selbin, I understand you're on the phone.
Yes.
You're on.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right.
Yes, sir.
To answer the question directly, it seems that not very many people have looked at the 217 approval, but the 217 approval had piping going to the brook. Some of that has been done. All right. The plantings have not been done because the construction hasn't been finished. Once the construction is finished and all the land is regraded, the plantings will be done. A very simple thing.
Then maybe we ought to get those sent to us, Rick, because I'd like to see what they're supposed to be doing.
Okay.
And I think it's right on what the engineer has done. There's a diagram that shows the piping out to the brook. And I think you're the gentleman that mentioned the water cross on the north side the other day when you were visiting the property.
That's correct. Yes, that's right.
That is an overflow when the water cross in the land trust gets clogged up, it permeates through that wall. And that water is very small. I've been here since 1979, and it's about as large as it's ever been. But I'm not sure that's even on the diagram because at most times it's completely dry.
What I've seen around, it should be on there. That's so, it's not a major point to me, but if you're going to have an accurate diagram, you should have any intermittent water course, and there's water in it when I was there the other day, and it was dug out as an intermittent water course, almost the total top of your property. Now, whether or not it's always filled, that's why it's intermittent, but yeah.
Continue that up, it goes to the other end of the property. The entire property has that sort of a brook around it. All right. The brook on the north side is very seldom has any water. 2/3 of it has never seen water since 1979. But there's no problem in putting it on the map. If that's what's going to turn somebody on, fine.
Rick, go ahead.
As far as intermittent water course, they had a soil scientist at the time in 2017 that had sought to identify the regulated areas. It did not meet the definition of intermittent water course. So
you might want to go out there, Rick. It's got water in it as of today. So,
but it is the state statute. The definition of intermittent water course has to have water in it more than just after a standard storm. It has to show alluvium, and it has to show a bank.
Certain soil types and certain types of
so I don't know if that's the problem. Then the other thing is what is not shown on the plan is the pumps that were recently installed at the brook as part of the original permit. But it does show the infiltrators that were installed on the property. They're right behind the addition. There's a bank of 2. And then in the front of the house, there's an array of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. What Mr. Devanzo is calling for is adding to those infiltrators in the front of the property. And that's what they're working with to ensure that it's accurate and is going to be functional.
okay, Bob, have somebody else talk or whatever you want to do.
No, I think we need that information in order to be going forward. Don't know to understand that. I feel more comfortable with that. And then also wetlands change. Be interesting. Maybe you and I should take a walk out there to Rick to see this this non-existent intermittent water course. We can do, and then because times I believe Alexander Mock did that in 2016, as I recall. So that's 5 years ago, 6 years ago. So times change. So we'll go take a look at it. Okay. All right. Defer action.
What does this mean to me?
Okay. Essentially, we're going to wait for DPW to do their due diligence on this to make sure that the infiltrators are, there's a perk test that has to be done to make sure the infiltrators are going to work. Okay, because I don't want infiltrators that are below water, that are below the water table, because they'll accumulate water, they won't disperse water. Okay, and the other thing is Rick and I are going to go out and take a look at what Bill Wright has mentioned here, because the wetlands scientist that did your analysis did it in 2016. It's on the chart, and so given recent histories and things like this, we constantly adding and subtracting wetlands and intermittent water courses to the town of Darien's map, because geography changes over time. And so what we want to do is we're going to go take a look at it and see if we feel there's a need for a wetland scientist to go over and look at what Mr. Wright says. Does it meet the definition? Does it meet the state's definition of an intermittent water course with the appropriate alluvium soils and fauna or flora? Excuse me.
My question is, even if it did, what difference does it make to what I'm trying to do?
What Mr. Wright's point was he wanted to correct the map. We want to have those. We like to have accurate maps of intermittent water courses, because your neighbor may come in at some point and do something. And if we have accurate maps, we can better serve the neighbor.
If this is an administrative thing, I clearly have no problem.
All right. Okay. So we'll defer action on that, and then
Why don't we do it as a vote? So make a motion to defer action pending the submission of additional information.
Okay. Rick suggests that we take a vote here to defer action. I need a motion for that. Hey, Bill, you want to make the motion to defer action on this?
Yeah, I'll make them defer action.
Okay, thank you. Carolyn, can I have a second?
Yes, I second that we defer action on this application.
Okay, I'll without objection, so moved. Okay, and our last piece of business here is to adjourn. Carolyn, I'll let you have the honor of making the motion.
I make a motion that we adjourn this meeting at 9:50 p.m.
Okay, Lauren, second?
Yes, I'll second the motion.
Okay, I know this is approved. Without objection, so moved.